Well, we had a beautiful day for elections yesterday, and we had good turnout with thousands of Hoosiers casting their ballots. And Sam's been going over some of those bigger local key races here in Indiana.
Yeah, that's right. Quite a few statewide races too, right, that we've been keeping track of. Specifically, Secretary of State. There were 3 candidates vying for that position. I want to show you how exactly this all shook out. So take a look at the map here. A lot of red. That's because we know this morning Republican Diego Morales took the victory last night with 54% of the votes. If you look here, though, at Marion County, this is a deep, deep blue. That means a lot of Democratic votes here. Destiny Wells took Marion County with 63%. But if you take a look around some of these other counties here in Hamilton County, we've got Morales with 48%. We'll look here in Boone County next, Morales 50%, and then down in Hendricks County, he took that one as well with 53%. We were there last night when that victory was called. We caught up with Morales. Here's what he had to say.
I'd like to thank all Hoosiers who voted for me, all across the 92 counties. I'm proud to say that I visited all 92 counties multiple times, and I'm humble with their confidence to put in me. Thank you, my fellow Hoosiers.
And then, hey, 2 quick more statewide races we've been keeping track of. Auditor of State went to Republican Tara Klutz again, and then also Treasurer of State, Republican Daniel Elliott. Now, when it comes to the House, a couple more quick updates for you. Here in District 7, Democrat incumbent Andre Carson will continue serving District 7. And then here in District 2, this is in northern Indiana. We know Republican Rudy Yoakum took that victory with 65% of the votes there. That was the seat that was held by Jackie Walorski, who died earlier this year in a car accident. Now, I want to remind you, we've got all these results scrolling at the bottom of your screen. Coming up at 6:30, we're going to talk a little bit more about some county prosecutor races that folks are talking about this morning. We'll see you back here in just a few minutes.
All right, Sam, thank you so much. Well, one of the first races called was the re-election win for Republican Senator Todd Young.
Yeah, that 50-year-old incumbent will serve a second term in the U.S. Senate in Washington after beating challenger Hammond Mayor Tom McDermott by a pretty wide margin. So in his speech, Young said that victory came early on election night because the Biden administration has made bad choices and they need to stop reckless spending and enforce the law, something that he plans to continue to push for in his next term.
Thank you to every single Hoosier who invested their trust in me, and to everyone who was willing to give me a chance of earning it. I'm going to work tirelessly over the next 6 years to ensure that I live up to your high expectations.
Young focused a lot of his campaign on the economy and inflation, and in his next term, Young says that he will fight federal spending, but also work across the aisle on issues like Ukraine and China. On the national level, there are several close races in those key battleground states that could change the balance of power in Congress.
Yeah, our Gina Glaros joins us now in studio, and she's keeping an eye on these races while you slept. Gina?
Good morning, Julia and Carlos. The battle over control of both the House and the Senate continues this morning. The results could change the balance of power for the remainder of the president's term. And of course, we are closely monitoring several big races for U.S. Senate. The focus right now seems to be on Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona. In Arizona, it is a tight battle right now between Democrat Mark Kelly and Republican Blake Masters. As of 6 o'clock this morning, Kelly leads the race with 52% of the votes, while Masters trails at 45%. In Georgia, it's an even tighter race right now. Democrat Raphael Warnock is ahead of Republican Herschel Walker by about 35,000 votes. Georgia has a rule where you have to win 50% of the vote plus 1 vote to avoid a runoff situation. Meanwhile, a big win for Democrats in Pennsylvania. Democrat John Fetterman beating out Republican Dr. Oz, flipping a Republican-held seat. Here's what Fetterman had to say right after hearing the news.
I'm proud of what we ran on. Protecting a woman's right to choose. Raising our minimum wage. Fighting the union way of life.
Other surrounding states like Ohio saw Republican J.D. Vance win his seat for U.S. Senate, while Republican Rand Paul holds on to his seat. In our neighbors in Kentucky, ahead at 6:45, how the race is impacting abortion rights in states across the country. Julia.
All right, thanks so much, Gina. Well, the battle for control of Congress, both the House and the Senate, coming down to a dwindling number of key races, with Democrats dashing Republicans' hope for that so talked about red wave. I'm joined once again by political analyst Dr. Laura Wilson. Dr. Wilson, thanks first of all for being with us this morning.
My pleasure.
I know you've enjoyed watching all of this unfold. But let's first talk about, we talk about winners and losers, but I feel like the country is going to kind of be on the losing end here with the divided government, if that happens.
And it looks like it's very likely. It hasn't been the red wave we thought we might see, but still that 218 in the House is the key that we're focused on. Divided government oftentimes means there's going to be some legislative gridlock, but I caution people between thinking, oh, no policy will ever get passed. We see lots of legislative gridlock when one party controls both the House, the Senate, and the presidency too. Knowing that these races are very close, though, I think tells you voters were very invested in this election and they were very engaged in the outcome.
Yeah, I think that, we knew especially a lot of issues for women getting to the polls, the so-called pink wave, as it were, for control of, getting control of their bodies back, right?
Yes, abortion was a major issue, especially for the Democratic Party. You also saw a record number of female candidates running. And
that's true.
Of course, we're still watching for the outcome of many races, but I suspect you'll have a record number of female elected officials come January.
Well, let's talk about some of those, the battles here. We talked a lot about how much money was spent in Pennsylvania, as Gina just mentioned, with Fetterman taking that seat for the first time as a Democrat. We had the state Senate here, the races here. Also, a lot of money spent on those.
A lot of money. And I think the one that you could really highlight is talking about Kyle Walker. He was the Republican incumbent, notable this summer because he did not support the abortion bill that had passed. He thought it was too much. So a moderate Republican. He had Jocelyn Vare as a competitor for the Democratic Party. He spent over $1 million, but was able to secure his seat by 10%. A pretty important victory, certainly for the party there.
So what were the ones that you thought you would wake up to have the winners or the losers this morning, and you're still waiting? Well,
I didn't think I'd have Georgia, and we don't have Georgia. I'd say actually more interestingly, I didn't think we'd have Pennsylvania, and we do have the results of that race. Ohio was not nearly as close, I think, as many people thought it might be. Same for Kansas and New York in terms of governor's races. But it's those House races that are their toss-up. I think that's really where we thought we'd see that red wave come in. The Senate looked like it could still be under Democratic control, but not having the House called yet, I think that is the biggest surprise.
Right. And just quickly, too, on the note of that red wave, we knew that a lot of political pundits were watching Indiana, particularly that District 1 up to the north, and it certainly did not flip red, but it was a very tight race.
It was. And the fact that that was competitive in the first place, I think, tells you a lot about the politics right now in 2022. That district had been Democrat for decades, like almost a century, and it will remain Democrat at least for the next 2 years as incumbent. Mervan was able to hold on to that seat.
And would have been the first black woman in Congress as well had she gotten a hold of that seat. Well, we appreciate, Dr. Wilson, your time coming in. I know you'll have fun at U of ND today talking to your political students.
Yes.
All right, thank you.